This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Drink O'Clock Podcast, where interesting people from all walks of life sit down for a drink and a conversation. Each week, Drink O'Clock features a diverse range of guests who share their stories, expertise, and insights. Hosted by Rob Max AVV Valencias. This podcast is the perfect way to unwind and hear from some amazing people over a refreshing beverage. So, sit back, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the conversation on Drink O'Clock.
All right, man. Well, look, it's a fucking Tuesday, so I always like to start this by, I don't know if you're drinking or not.
Yeah, I'm not going to come on the Drink O'Clock podcast and not drink. Come on.
Cheers, brother. Oh, Woodford Reserve. All right.
Yeah.
All right. He came down to clown. I love it, man. Well, yeah. Cheers. Delicious. This is the Drink O'Clock podcast. My name's Rob Valencias. I have the pleasure of having now. Your book has your middle name, so I was going to introduce you as Robert James Maiolo. Did I say it right?
Yeah, you got it. No.
Nice. But do you like having the James in there? That's just an author thing, right?
Yeah, and then in a couple of my reviews for my book, people called me R.J. Maiolo, which I guess is where J.K. Rowling came from. So it kind of felt cool.
That. I like that. But let's get into. So you're an author, right? And I didn't see anything else. So was this your first book? The Book with No Answers? It's your first book, right?
Yeah, that is my first, and I would probably say my only book, because the book writing process is terrible. But yeah, I'm an author. I'm a regular guy. I have a full-time job. Live with my fiance up here in Toronto. But always wanted to write a book for, let's call it 5-ish years. Didn't know what it was going to be about. Didn't really know when or how I was going to write it. Just knew I wanted to be an author. And then around late last year, got around to writing the Book with No Answers.
So I found it interesting. So the way you label it is you say it's not a self-help book, but a self-coaching book. Yeah. And I thought that was pretty intriguing. Why did you want to go the self-coaching book over this? And look, I'll start this by saying I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I've tried to do the self-help book thing. And for me, and I didn't get a chance to get to your book, and I will. Don't worry. Anyone I interview, I love interviewing authors. I will buy your book on Amazon. Do you have an audiobook version?
I'm working on it, Rob.
So when your audiobook version goes live, you let me know. I'll buy it instantly. I always support people that when they jump on the pod. What made you do the self-help or the self-coaching over self-help? I was intrigued when I was like reading. I went through all your reviews and shit like that. I wanted to get a feel for what people were thinking about the book.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So so the book's called The Book with No Answers. And the reason I went the self-coaching rather than self-help is, first of all, I figured there was enough self-help books, so I probably didn't need to write another one. Every answer you're looking for is probably out there in another self-help book. And then I think what intrigued me to the self-coaching realm is I never wanted to have to answer the question, why should I listen to you? Because I've never had a good answer to why should I listen to you. And now, when someone asks me that question, I can say, I'm not asking you to listen to me. I'm asking you to listen to yourself. Because when you read through the book is it's called The Book with No Answers because it's a book full of questions. And it's a bunch of questions you can ask yourself. And through the process of asking yourself questions, you're almost coaching yourself to finding those answers. So when someone says, "Why should I listen to you?" I'm saying, you shouldn't listen to me. You should look into the mirror. You should listen to yourself. The best way to listen to yourself is by asking yourself questions. And if you're looking for some great questions to ask yourself, well, I got a great book for you. It's called The Book with No Answers. So that's kind of why I went down that path, I would say.
I like that, dude. I like that. So, before we get into the book, I always like to ask authors. I love interviewing authors because everyone has just a different style and a different mindset. And I think I was listening to Joe Rogan earlier today, and he was talking to somebody, and they were talking about AI and, what it would do to, I guess, take over humans and just, be humans. And one of the arguments is that the creativity side of it could never replicate. And I do, part of me, and I'm a tech guy, if you've listened to my podcast, anyone listening, I'm a tech guy. I do think that from a technology standpoint, AI and artificial intelligence tech could never really fully replicate that just creative side of human beings. And yeah, there's, maybe music it could replicate to a certain degree and stuff like that. But there's so much passion and things in books that people put down. I mean, I just interviewed, another author named Marcy, and she had an incredible fucking story, man.
Yeah.
First time she wrote,
pod. So good.
So, dude, just fucking blew my mind. And I listened to half her book in one day because it was just so intriguing. And she put all her emotions into that book. And it just was a different way. And I interviewed another author, and he was a sci-fi guy. And he put in references to just his life, but also like other sci-fi things that he read growing up because he was big into comics. And, what went into, you wanting to be an author? So give me a snapshot of early Robert, Bob. What do you like to go by? Because everyone always asks me that as being a Rob.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so many versions. Yeah, I like Rob. I think it's like it's like professional, but it's also kind of fun. And yeah, I like Rob.
So talk to me about the early years. What kind of inspired you to? Was that author always there type of thing?
No. Oh my God, no. I never thought I would write a book. Really, I mean, the reason I wrote a book is actually incredibly selfish and borderline morbid. Is as I got into my I would say into my mid to late 20s. When I was 23, not to jump ahead too much, but when I was 22, my brother passed away. It's actually something I share in common with your previous guest.
Sorry to hear that, man.
So thank you. Appreciate that. So he passed away from a heart condition. He was 32 and a half. And around that time, I would say a couple years later, I had this just like existential dread that I was going to die and leave nothing behind. And I tried to think of things that live forever. And I thought, well, art lives forever. You can go to a museum and look at a painting that's 2,000 years old, and you could listen to a song by dudes who have been dead for 100 years, and you could do all these things. So I'm like, if I could create a piece of art, then this worry of me dying and leaving nothing behind would go away. So I go, well, I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't sing. I'm a half decent writer. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm a half decent writer. And, even through high school, I always took the university level English classes. And I always thought I had a way with words. And people have told me this as well. So I'm like, why don't I just write a book? And I had no clue what that was going to be about. And I had no clue, what the topic would be or anything like that. But to jump ahead a little bit, and it's kind of the intro to the book, is I was working at a bank. I left, and now I'm back there now, actually. But I did a talk to a bunch of my colleagues. It was about two. I worked on a big floor, so it was. I did a talk in front of 200 of my colleagues, and
Shit, man,
yeah,
that's not easy, bro.
not easy, not easy. I've never had stage fright. I can't explain why. Just when I get on a stage, I don't know. I can't explain why. And anyway, after that talk, someone came up to me and said, "Man, that'd be a great book." And that was 4 years ago, and I wrote the book about a year and a half ago. So for 2.5 years, I just simmered on it. Maybe that is a book. Maybe that is a book. Maybe that is a book. And then eventually, I just said, you know what, fuck it, and just went for it.
Yeah, what do you got to lose at that point?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Speaking in public is a unique experience. I work in insurance, and throughout my, this will be 9 years. I'm a trainer, so I was in sales for a while. Now I train salespeople and salespeople across the country, and I've noticed, obviously, like when you first start, you just get these butterflies, and for me, I wasn't good at it. I mean, I'm good at speaking and talking to people, and it's kind of a different atmosphere when you're talking to 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people, right? But I learned as I went through, you feed off of the audience.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not everybody, but for me, I feed off of the people in the audience. I feed off of the head nods and like the body language. And there's been plenty of ones I've done, and insurance isn't fun to a certain degree. So there's been plenty of ones that I've done that went really, really well. People were super engaged. And then there's been other ones where you got people falling asleep in the back, and insurance agents are just weird. They're weird people, dude. I mean,
you have to be.
They come from all facets of life. Their moms, their dads, sons. I couldn't take an insurance person and put a picture and be like, that is your staple person, because it's not. They're all over the fucking map. But how do you feel about public speaking? Like, it's just, you said you didn't get stage fright, but when COVID happened, I'll tell you this: when COVID happened and my company had to do remote presentations, it was awful. I actually felt worse presenting to a camera than presenting to the people live, because you get none of those reactions. You get none of the feedback that you need to kind of be upbeat and kind of keep it going. But what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I love public speaking. It's part of the reason I wrote the book, is because I wanted it to be two things: a ticket to podcasts, which is this. It's tough for me to say, "Hey, Rob, can I come on your podcast?" And you go, "Why?" And I go, "I don't know. I just want to talk." It's easier to say, "Hey, I'm an author. I'd love to talk about my book." So it's kind of a ticket to get on podcasts and a ticket to get into public speaking, which I haven't quite cracked yet, but I'm working on. And it's funny you say you feed off of reaction. When I've done public speaking, I feed off of silence. And the reason for that is when you watch, for example, if you watch your favorite movie, my favorite movies are Snatch and Spotlight. When you watch your favorite movie, you're not there like, wow, this is really good, and nodding your head. You're sitting there like dead silent, because you're just trying to absorb as much as you can. And when I did that talk at my current company that led to the book, it was just beyond pin drop silence. Like, I could hear people breathing in the back room. I can't explain this moment. It was just everyone was just like waiting for me to say the next word. And that sounds very self-indulgent, but what I really fed off of was the fact that they're being quiet because they can't wait for me to just get on to the next word and keep telling this story. And it's funny because there was people that's the fun thing about public speaking, is you decide the story you want to tell, and you can literally say anything when you get on that stage. And there was people there that I had worked with for 4 years, 5 years, never told them my brother passed away, never told them the story about when it happened, never told them any of these things. And I got to stand on stage and tell them these stories, and just see them sit there and just like googly eyed waiting for it to happen. So when it comes to public speaking, yeah, I don't know. I love the freedom of it, and I love the fact that the audience has no clue what's coming next, and and you're the only person in the room that knows what's coming next, and you can build up to something that's going to knock them off their heads, or something that's going to maybe educate them, or something like that. You're 100% in control. You're the quarterback of that room. Yeah, that's
I
what I
like
love
that.
about that. Yeah.
I like that. And you said selfish like 2 or 3 times, and I'll tell you this, and it's meant to be a joke, not to offend anybody, but I feel like most authors are a little bit of selfish people, right? Because you want your story to be heard. And
Yeah.
like that's the point of being an author. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, anyone that writes, I mean, that's in your head, and not in all cases. Sometimes people are like, I'm going to write this and no one's going to read it, and then it becomes a bestseller, right? But I think that's it's funny that you say that, and I like that attitude where it's not like, hey, I wrote this, everyone needs to read it. It's like, hey, I wrote this. I feel like I'm being selfish. I hope people read it. And I'll tell you, dude, I mean, you have over 40 reviews on Amazon, almost 5-star, which is pretty remarkable. Hold on, let me quote. I wanted to read one that I thought was pretty good. So this was like one of your most recent ones. Like I went through a bunch, but this one was good. And he said, while working on a project, I stumbled upon this book, a refreshing change from the usual financial literature that often refreshes the same old theories. It begins gently, picks up pace, much like a snowball gaining momentum. With 20 years in finance and numerous MBA courses, so this guy obviously knows his shit, under my belt, including behavioral finance, I've read a lot, but this book made me stop, reflect, understand myself better, setting the stage for an effective action plan, which I think is important. As an experienced professional, I found it, and this was, I thought was probably the best part of this specific review. As an experienced professional, I found it valuable for realigning my focus on what's truly important, a task that's often more challenging than it seems. It's also a beneficial read for those just beginning their careers, like my children, offering insights that are relevant at any stage. And that obviously that was a 5-star review. And you got a bunch of those. And that one, for me, it was like, wow, okay, like if I read that, like that shit should be on the back of your book. That's great. My question to you is like, what's it like reading, obviously this guy could be in his 50s or 60s, reading, a review like that where you changed, obviously you're probably younger than this guy, but you changed his whole mindset. I think that's wild to think about.
Yeah, it's honestly incredibly uncomfortable because I just, I went into it. It's funny that the author community and the self-publishing community, there's a lot of people who are like, they write books to make money. You write this book. If you go to the Reddit self-publish community,
Yeah.
the common quote is the best thing you can do to sell books is to write another book. The best thing you can do to sell that book is to write another book. And there's this like community of just continuing to write books, put shit out there. I was never part of that. I just wanted to write a book and connect with people and just, I guess, tell my story, but more if I thought there's something in my head that can help someone else, it is my responsibility to put it on paper and publish it. That was the reason I did it. If there's something in my head that I think can help someone get through a tough time in their life, start their journey, make a change that will do better for them and their family and their friends, it isn't cool. It's my responsibility. I have to write it and publish it. There's no choice. I cannot sleep until this is done. And that really hit me after my brother died, is that I've been through this harrowing journey and I learned so much from it. I cannot keep it inside. I can't. I have a responsibility to the world I live in, the friends I have, the family that loves me, and the people that could buy this. I have to write this book. And when you're from that mentality, all of the reviews and people saying they like it, people buying it, folks like you who want to have me on their podcast. It feels strange because I thought that none of this is ever going to happen. I wrote this book and thought I'm just going to write it and publish it, and who gives a fuck what happens after that. It was more, I wrote this book because I couldn't sleep at night until I did. So when I read a review like that of someone who read it and actually got knowledge from it and told their kids or used it for their MBA program or whatever it is, this is just like, it's beyond gravy and it's great, but it is so far from the reason I wrote the book. I wrote the book because I couldn't fucking sleep at night. I wrote the book because I had this thing in my head saying, you've got lessons in here and it's not fair that you keep it in. So reviews like that are great, but it's so far from the reason I wrote the book. I wrote the book because I felt like I had a message to share, and having someone read it and like it is just gravy and that cherry on the sundae and all that. Yeah.
And I think for me as a consumer, I would be more inclined to buy your book knowing that that's your affirmation, that you didn't make the book to make money. And I think that's the Reddit subgroups or whatever. They're doing a injustice to young authors, at least, right? Or new authors, because you don't have to be young to write a book. But like cranking out content, yeah, I mean, it's okay, social media. Like, here's my thing with podcasting, right? When I was just starting, I was trying to put out whatever I could. And it got to a certain point where I was like, listen, I can't just interview anybody and post it because I'm listening back. I listen to every episode I record. I edit all my own shit. I specifically edit my audio. I got a buddy that does my video and stuff, but I specifically edit my audio. I listen to everything. I re-listen to everything. And if I listen to something and go, shit, this isn't really entertaining, then I'm going to be less inclined to put up, because if I, myself, the creator, don't want to fucking listen to it, what makes me think that other people are going to listen to it and be like, this shit's great, right? Yeah. For me, it's got to be about the quality, not necessarily the quantity. And we live in a world with social media where it's quantity. It doesn't fucking matter what you put out, right? 1 out of 20 might be viral, and that's all that matters. And that's just, it's a shitty time that we live in with stuff like that, in my opinion. Look, it's great to have content all the time. And look, when I was, I'm 37. When I was younger, you'd have to wait so long for things to come out. And I think there's a lot of pressure on authors, especially with good stories, where it's like, hey, you need to put something out in a year. And sometimes that shit doesn't materialize, man. I mean, especially when you got novellas that are like 800, 900, 1,000 pages of shit. It's like, you can't create a world that I would want to live in or listen to. A lot of it's audiobooks for me. I drive an hour to work there and back. So 2 hours a day, I'd rather listen to an audiobook than a radio. And, and I don't know if you agree or not, but I mean, for me, it's like, yes, we're in a consumerist type of environment where it's like consume, but you gotta have quality shit, man. It's like, I don't want to, kick the can down the fucking street and hope that it's good, Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you being a sales coach, you'll know this better than I would. People buy from people, and people buy from people in the sense that, okay, something like insurance, or I work in high net worth financial planning. So, the products are all the fucking same. I work at a bank. Okay, every bank has every bank has investments. Every bank has the same shit. But the reason they're going to invest,
all that shit, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have RSPs. You have 401ks. Like, everyone has the same shit. It's the reason someone's going to invest with you, and where I work, they're going to invest, $3.5, $5, $10 million. It's because they believe in you, and they trust you, and they trust the person. So the reason I brought that back is, like, when I thought of the book, and one of the great joys of writing the book is that my friends that have bought it have said, when I read it, it felt like we were just talking. It felt like a conversation. It felt like my buddy. was sitting beside me and we're just having a conversation. That is the biggest compliment anyone has ever told me, because I wanted it to be authentic and I wanted it to be me. And the thing you miss when you just try and write 1,000 books is you can't be authentic 1,000 times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You only got so much in you. And everyone's got different amounts. You're a Joe Rogan fan, so am I. He's got 2,000 podcasts in him. Some people might have 10 podcasts in them. You've got maybe 100 podcasts in you. I got one book in me, and I put it all in there. That's it. I can't write. I won't fucking do that again. I promise you. I can't do it. It's too painful. So, you know, the thing I try to remember when you talk about quality is that, like, people respond to authenticity, and people can tell when you're bullshitting. And there was times that I wrote things down in that book, and I'm like, that ain't me, dog. I'm just trying to sell books. That's not me. I cut it, and I replaced it with something that was authentic to me. It is, until the bots take over, people will buy from people and people will connect with people. And that is something that you do in your podcast. I tried to do in my book, and people seem to have responded to it. And that's why I think these podcasts are great, is that it's two people talking. And yeah, authenticity, there's nothing that can beat authenticity, I think. And quality and connection.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm guilty of that to a fault. Like, I will stay with somebody that's my salesperson, and I feel like you always need a salesperson. And I feel like I'm in sales, so maybe I'm a little biased on that. But, like, for instance, my car, saleswoman, her name's Tracy. Shout out Tracy if you listen to the podcast. She's awesome, and I'm a salesperson as well, and I trust that people will do right by me. And I could typically, if you're a salesperson, you kind of have that feeling like, this person's trying to fuck me, you know, like you just feel it in your bones. Yeah. And I've been dealing with the same girl now for probably 8-9 years. I lease because I get bored of shit quick when it comes to cars. I'm not like a huge car person, so I just like the new car smell every 3 years. But every time I end up owning a car at some point, it's just a piece of shit at the end of 7 or 8 years. So I'm like, all right, I'll just lease, and then they can deal with that shit every 3 years, right?
Don't tell Dave Ramsey. Fuck, he's gonna fucking come to your house.
I just, I trust her, and she trusts me, and we're on the same point where I say to her, hey, this is what I'm comfortable with spending. This is what I'm comfortable putting down. If you can meet me there, let's do it. If you can't, if it just doesn't work, then call me again in 3 months or whenever you know that we can get here. Because I think in sales, you can string people along all you want, but that doesn't do anything except piss the parties off, right? It's like, I've always thought in terms of, for me, being direct and honest with people, like, hey, this is what's going on. This is where I'm at. If you can get here, great. If not, then, let's talk in 6 months. And in car sales, it's worked out pretty well for me. It doesn't work out for everything, but for me, being direct with people, and look, I'm from the Northeast in the U.S., and we're known for being, I don't want to say assholes, but we're known for being
abrasive.
Abrasive is a good word, yeah. I'm not abrasive in that manner, but I will tell people, like, hey, this is what's going on. And I, in my sales pitches, even when I was in sales, I would say, hey, look, like, this is what's going on. This is what you can get. This is what I can get you. If you like it, let's do it. If not, then this isn't right for you. And for me, I've always felt, and look, I missed out on plenty of sales. I could have fluffed and, threw some lingo in there that confused people. And I've always felt like if someone could talk to me and trust me, and I'm telling them what's going on, that they would always come back. And it's funny, in my company, I had plenty of accounts that I brought on. They're still on with people in our sales team, and they ask about me all the time because I brought them on, and they never left because I didn't fucking bullshit them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important when you're in sales. Like, don't bullshit people, man. Like, yeah, maybe you'll get the sale and then you'll piss someone off, and then people don't think, especially young people, right? They don't think about the future. They don't think about that referral business. They don't think about the other things that could come in. You're always not going to make a ton of money on a sale. But for me, it's always been about, all right, so if I make a little bit on this one and a lot on 4 other people that they bring to me, sometimes that's more important than making a lot on one person and then nothing. Right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Welcome into Metalhead Journeys. What is Metalhead Journeys? It's exactly how it sounds. It's a journey through the world of metal by a couple of metalheads. Are you thinking of getting into metal? Where do you begin? There's so many different subgenres. What bands are good? What albums are good? We'll provide answers to all of those questions. We'll handle all the research and do all the dirty work by listening to the good, the bad, and the ugly, so you don't have to. Classic albums, new albums, bands no one's ever heard of. Get ready as we'll applaud and criticize with the same passion. This is Metalhead Journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's tough because I think where I work, high net worth financial advice, it's sales, but it's a Pope job. You do it till you die. You start at 30, but you're not going to get another job. You're going to do this job till you're fucking 70.
Yeah.
So you have that long term, you think, I'm going to do this job for the next 40 years. So I better think long term. So I got to think about referrals. I got to think about the fact that this client is going to tell their other friends. I got to think about the fact that this client, I might see them die and pass their money on to their kids. So I better make sure I make a relationship with their kids. Like that type of long term. You think in decades, you know what I mean? So if you're in that type of sales, you have to think long term and you have to think about the referral business. You can't be scummy. You know that people can smell bullshit, so you don't even bother trying to sell them bullshit. I think where you get tactics like that is where people are just, they're salesmen for a couple years and they're trying to parlay that into another career, or maybe parlay that into becoming a sales manager or a sales educator. So they're just trying to, puff up their scorecard, get their sales up, and tell their manager, hey, look at all this great stuff I did, even though I bullshitted all my clients and they all hate me and they won't buy from us again. But hey, look at all this great stuff I did. But if you're a true salesman will be a salesman for the rest of their life. So if you're a true salesman, you will not bullshit your clients and you will think about the long term. And I think if you truly love anything, author, podcaster, salesman, if you truly love anything, you'll think about the long term. So if you're a podcaster, you'll think about your clients, or you think about your listeners rather. And you'll think, I can't put a bullshit episode out because this listener is going to be a listener for mine for the next 10, 15 years. I've been listening to Joe Rogan for 10 years now. And if he started putting out bullshit episodes, I would have smelt it and stopped listening. But he knew that, hey, I'm trying to build something big, so I got to put out quality. I got to get out good guests. I got to make sure I got good studios and all that stuff. So I think if you're really in it, you think about quality, you don't bullshit. I think if you're phony and you're trying to parlay this into something else, then you start doing the things you're talking about. Short-term sales, bullshit clients, puff up your scorecard, try and just do this long enough to get into another job. And you can tell that with authors as well. I'm just going to write a book, write a couple other books, then I get a couple speaking gigs, then fuck the books. I'll just do these speaking gigs. Then I do a podcast, then fuck the speaking gigs. I'll do the podcast. You know what I mean? Just trying to parlay it into something else. You could tell who's in it for the long run and who's not.
I mean, I get the stepping stone thing to a certain degree, right? I mean, I think we all do, because, I think you want to have something to strive for, but I don't like the skip. It's like, all right, well, I'm here, but I'm going to skip this step and get to here. And I'm not going to even fucking think about that step. And I think that's where a lot of salespeople go wrong, right? Because, if they have to take a step back, they don't have anything to fall back on. It's like too many people make that mistake. And, it's everything I've learned in what I do, it's all about relationships. And, I always go back to this, but with social media, I think people have forgotten how to create lasting relationships. And that doesn't mean just sales. I mean, I feel like that's family, friends, acquaintances. I mean, we as a society, whether it's the US, Canada, Japan, whatever, people just don't know how to build relationships with people anymore. And I think that's a problem. I mean, for me, like, you know, I grew up, you know, being 37, I'm considered a millennial, but I really don't find myself in that group just with the way of thinking. I feel like I'm a little different, but for me, it's about understanding concepts and figuring things out and building those relationships. And, you know, friendship, I value friendship a lot. You know, it's a little tough when you're an adult, right? I mean, I have best friends that I never talk to almost. You know, you get a couple texts here and there, but they're still your best friends. But then I have people I've met online where I talk to every day. I've never met 95% of them. But they're people I talk to more than my people that are a half hour from me, you know? But what do you feel about like relationship building? It's different, right? It's changed.
Yeah, I feel like long term thinking in general is just kind of not so sexy anymore. It's all about. I think that's part of like it's kind of part of the world you live in with podcasting of like, you know, it's not super fun to do 100 podcasts and nobody gives a shit. It's not super fun to you know to go through like people now, you know, like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, like people love them now, but nobody gave a shit when they were working away for 10 years and broke and not that successful. Um, it's yeah, people want the end result. People want to be Beyonce, but they don't want to sing in a booth and release a song and no one cares.
Instant
People want to
success, you know, instant
yeah,
success.
people want to be Joe Rogan, but they don't want to release 100 podcast episodes and no one listens or gives a fuck. People want to be Elon Musk, but they don't want to start a business and it fails and no one cares. People just want that end result. And I think social media has a lot to blame where it's, you know, social media doesn't feature people who are figuring it out. Social media features people who have quote unquote figured it out, people who are famous, people who are popular. Um, and it just it takes away all of the long term thinking, and all people give a shit about is like, what can I do to make a video that will get 10 million views? That's all people think about for YouTube. Or what can I do to be the next, if I'm writing a book, what can I do to be the next James Clear or Colleen Hoover, where I've sold 2 million copies this year? And it's unfortunate because a lot of self discovery and a lot of finding yourself as an artist comes when you're creating and nobody gives a fuck.
Yeah.
And the best part about me writing a book is we just reorganized, but right over there is my den, and I had my desk there, and it'd be 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be writing about my brother, and I'd be crying on the fucking keyboard, and I'd be spilling my soul into this book, and nobody gave a fuck. My fiance cared, but she was sleeping. She's not a night owl. But nobody gave a fuck. And that's the I learned so much about myself in those moments. And I wish I don't know what your demographic are. I hope there's a couple people a little bit younger than me and you. I'm 33. I hope there's a couple people younger than me and you. You can learn so much about yourself when you're pouring your soul into your craft and nobody cares. You learn so much about yourself because that is when you're doing something for the love of it. It's easy to do things when everyone cares. It's
Yeah.
easy to do things when you got a million viewers. But when you're doing something and nobody's buying or listening or watching, that's when you really love it. And you'll learn so much about yourself when you do it. And I really wish people did that more. I wish people did long form content the way we're doing rather than these clips on Instagram, these no context clips. I wish people did more long form content, and I wish people did more long term content. And they don't. And understandable, but unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean it's the grind,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's lost in a lot of younger years. Like I tell you, man, I'm in the 60s in terms of my episodes, and
Yeah.
I mean it's weird with podcasting. Like my first episode is still my most downloaded episode.
Well,
To this day, it's still the top one, and I think it was like the algorithm was like new podcast, and then
yeah.
and then I'm like, oh shit, I got something here. And then episode 2,
Yeah.
you're like, what the fuck? And then 3,
Well,
you're like, what the fuck? And then you just kind
yeah.
of keep doing it, and you refine your craft. And I think that's important too with authors, right? I'm sure when you started the book and what you thought you were going to put into it, it was a totally different part of you that ends up in the actual book at the end, right? It's like you kind of just go through this process of, I guess it's content creation, right? I mean, we're all
Yeah.
creating content to be consumed, and it's a weird thing, but it's also a snowball. So I saw my largest growth as a podcast last month in November, and I've been putting out, it's like the episodes and things I think that'll do really well don't. And the ones that I don't think they'll do well, that I still think are great episodes, are the ones that do really, really well. And then things just kind of snowball, because I think it's the same thing in sales, right? Referrals. Hey, you got to listen to this guy's podcast. It's really good. And then they tell their friends. And it only takes a couple people. And it takes time, though. And I do think people just want that instant success, and it doesn't work that way in this world, man. I mean, yeah, you might get one viral video, one viral hit, or one viral whatever, but
Yeah.
what are you going to do to kind of build on that? And that's where I think a lot of these creators struggle and fall off, because they don't know what to do after the fact. I mean, a good example is like the TikTok guy that would do this, right?
Yeah.
Where he'd be like, they're like coming up with all this stuff, right? And he had a good run.
Yeah.
I haven't seen shit from that guy, because I feel like there's only so much of that you can do before it runs out. And I'm sure he made
You can only do
great
this
money.
so many times. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can do this.
and that's not to knock on his content. It was hilarious, but he probably wasn't thinking long term. Well, how do I take this and kind of build on this? Because he had millions and millions of followers and views and all, whatever the fuck it is, right? And I think if you're a creator and if you're listening to this, think about what you're doing and cultivate it. And it's not going to be great at the start, and you're going to be like, interviewing people is weird. I feel comfortable doing it now, but there's been certain cases where, I'm trying to, someone just doesn't, they seem like they're going to be a good guest, and then it's hard to pull shit out of them. So I have to drive the conversation. It's different with someone like you. Like, you could tell you're easy to talk to. So I could bring up something, you'd be like, yeah, all right, and then you go into what you want to do. But some people, it's harder. And I didn't get that in the beginning. I had to kind of learn to do that. And I think if you just kind of hone on what you're doing, and the grind is so fucking important, man, right? Like you said, and it's something I did want to bring up a little bit, but the loss of your brother, how has that impacted you? Because I have a younger brother. He's 5 years younger than me. And I've talked about this before, many times, but he's an addict. He's probably died 7 times, easy. Narcan has brought him back to life multiple times, and the addict life is rough.
Yeah.
Now he's been sober for like over 2 years, so thank God. But I couldn't imagine losing him, and I talk to him every other day or every couple days. So I would never wish that on my worst enemy. So I need to ask, like, and if you're comfortable, of course, like, how has that impacted you? Obviously, it was a big impact in terms of your book and your writing and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. I don't know how it impacted me, because there's days where it fueled me and there's days where it buried me. and I don't know how to explain it. I've never figured out how to explain it, Rob. I think the best way I can explain it is that it's made everything 100x. It's made the good times 100 times better, and it's made the bad times 100 times worse.
Wow.
And it's made me much more cognizant of the fact that what we have, life, friends, family, is so fragile. And we just cannot take it for granted. Today I was at work and we had a town hall and everyone's just like cheering about nonsense.
Yeah.
And I just sat there and thought, this isn't for me. And it's fine. I make decent money. I pay for this place. I'm getting married in June. I can pay for it. But
Congrats.
thank you. But my brother passing away has made me realize what is for me and what is not for me, and what matters to me and what doesn't matter to me. It's made everything insanely black and white. Insanely black and white. And the bullshit has dissipated a lot in my life. And I've become very crystal clear in what's for me and what's not for me. One of the most beautiful stories in my life is March 16th this year, 2023. I turned 1 day older than my brother did when he died. So I got the tomorrow that he never got. And I spent that day with my girlfriend. And that night I proposed to her, asked her to marry me. Because I thought, what would I want to do if it was my last day on this planet? And the only answer I could think of was to tell my girlfriend, hey, I want to marry you and spend the rest of my life with you.
Wow. That's some heavy shit, brother.
And that does not happen unless you lose your brother. You do not think about things that clearly unless you lose your brother. My brother was my best friend. We played Street Fighter. We hung out in the park. We were this close. That and that does not happen unless you lose someone that close to you. And and again, because of that, I had to write this book. It wasn't. It'd be cool to write a book one day. Maybe I'll write about this. It was. I'm up till 4 in the morning thinking about my brother and thinking about the message he gave me and thinking I've got something in me and I gotta put it on paper and I gotta publish it. And there's not a thing on this planet that will stop me. And that's what bugs me about short-term thinking is that you don't have that backstory. And if you don't have that authenticity, I don't care if you're selling insurance, selling high net worth planning, selling a podcast, selling a book. If you don't have that story in you, you won't make it. You won't. You've got to want it and it's got to be real. So the thing that I learned the most about losing my brother is that what we have is just this fickle matter that can be gone whenever, and you've gotta you've gotta make it count, and you've gotta be crystal clear about what you want, and you've got to be crystal clear about how you're going to get it. And my brother was a great man, and I live every day trying to make him proud of me, and that's it.
Dude, I mean, that's wow. Honestly, I wasn't expecting what you were gonna say. I had no idea what you were gonna say based on what, because I think about it and like I was tearing up a little bit because I couldn't imagine losing my brother, and there was times where we thought we were gonna lose him. And I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't wish that shit on my worst enemy. It's not something that I think everyone needs to go through, but at least for you, and I think this boils down to us as a society today. You took it and you took a tragedy and you let it fuel good things. Like you didn't like say, "Hey, fuck it, I'm going to become an alcoholic." Although, cheers, it's a Drink Cock podcast, right? I'm done mine, by the way. I always end up finishing before I should. Or
we're only supposed to drink one.
it's technically 3 in my glass. I just don't tell people that.
There we go.
But it's you didn't let it lead you to do drugs or quit your fucking job or whatever, right? It fueled you to do other things and put it into good pretenses. And I think
but sorry, Rob.
No, go ahead.
I hate to cut you off.
It's your story, brother. Man. Go for it.
Yeah. Yes, it fueled me to do something good, but I do not think, and I'm not saying you're putting this on me, but I just want to make it clear. I do not think I'm someone special. I very, very easily could have become an alcoholic because of that. I very easily could have become a drug addict because of that. It is not because I'm some sort of meta god. It is because I had a great family around me that said, "Hey, Rob, I remember standing at my brother's casket." I can't believe I'm telling this story. I remember standing at my brother's casket with my sister. And she said to me, "We cannot let this drive us apart. We have to stay together." I remember that like a fucking movie tattooed in my brain.
Wow.
And the reason I say that is because a lot of people don't have that. They don't have a sister to turn to. They don't have parents to turn to. They have a bottle to turn to. They have drugs to turn to. They have friends who do not have their best intentions in mind to turn to. And I'm insanely lucky that, so when I found out my brother passed away, I was in England. I was in university. I'm insanely lucky I had a family to fly back to.
Wow.
Not a lot of people do.
No,
And
I agree.
I don't want to make it seem like I'm some fucking guy who broke through the trauma and made this great piece of work.
Yeah.
I had a great family to lean on to, and a lot of people don't. And I'm very empathetic to that fact. And to those people, I have no clue what to say to them, other than the fact that I could have very easily been one of them if I didn't have a great family to lean on. And these things hit you in ways that I could never explain in a 10-hour podcast, let alone a 1-hour podcast.
Look, man, I think adversity is what makes us human. And I say that in you can go through an adversity. We all go through things, right? We all go through fucking trials and tribulations through life. I think that's what makes us human. But really what makes you who you are is who you come out as after the fact. And I don't want to glorify you, but for me, listening to, and look, have we talked before this podcast other than 2 minutes before I hit record?
No.
For me, I have a brother. So what you're saying resonates with me. And the fact that I'm not crying right now, by the way, is and I say this because I just started, look, man, I'm an open book. I just started taking testosterone because my testosterone was fucking really low. And that's what happens when you get fucking older. Shit just happens.
That can happen.
Right? My blood was perfect. My testosterone was like, nah, bro, go fuck yourself. And I feel like my emotions are a little skewed more than usual. But for me, it's thinking, right? So the moment you said that, I instantly said, fuck, if my brother died, right? I would feel horrible. And I don't know how I would continue. And that's an adversity I haven't faced. So I appreciate you sharing that, because for me, it's a fear that I have not faced. And I don't know if I will. I don't know if I'm going to go before him. You never fucking know in life, bro. Shit is highly unpredictable. But I appreciate you sharing that. And I think you doing what you did, you're humble, you're human, and you came out on the other end and you produced something that wasn't just bullshit, right? It was heartfelt. It was something that mattered to you. And I think more people need to try to take their adversity and not go, woe is me, the world's against me. I think more people need to try and turn their adversities into wins in some way, whether that's being better at your job or your hobby or whatever you're doing. And every episode that I post of this podcast, I try to get different points across. And for me, I feel like the point of this is to, hey, don't fucking give up, man. You know, life fucking sucks. You're going to be tossed curveballs. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. Maybe I won't fucking wake up tomorrow and I'll never post this shit, right? That's just the reality we live in. And you could be the fucking healthiest person in the world and not be tomorrow. So, you know, any young people listening to this, and you know, I say this all the time, dude, but it's wild that I say that because when I was in my 20s, you know, my dad was a young dad. So, you know, he had us when he was, 20, 21. Same with my mom. She was really young. She was 18. So I have young parents. You know, my dad would say, hey, when you get older, you're going to fucking deal with this. Or, hey, you're like, fuck you, dad, fuck you.
Yeah.
But when you hit your 30s, shit changes. and you start to think about that stuff. And let me ask you this, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But, as I've gotten older, I started to think more about death and what happens after we go. Do you have any thoughts on the afterlife?
Oh God.
You don't have to be religious or anything like that.
No.
But,
Yeah. No.
I always like to ask.
I haven't really thought of a good answer, to be completely honest with you. The best answer I thought of is that one day when you die, you get to live your life exactly how you want to live it. And sure, let's call it heaven. Sure. And your parents are the exact age you want them to be, and your girl is the exact age, or your partner is the exact same age, and maybe if you have kids or whatever it is. That's why like a lot of, I don't know, I guess like it's a 2023 thing to like, and a lot of people who are less religious and they shit on religious people. It's nice to think that, hey, when you die, you go to heaven. It's a nice thought. And it's much better than, hey, I die and nothing happens.
True.
You know what I mean? Like, It's a lot better. It's much nicer to think like, hey, I'm dead and nothing I did matters and this world doesn't matter and everything. And one day the sun's going to expand and swallow the earth and we're all going to die. You know what I mean? It's much nicer to think, hey, maybe one day I'm going to die and go to heaven and everyone I love is going to be there and it's going to be a big party and it's going to be great. That's a much nicer thought.
Dude, I had a death doula on my podcast, and I asked her that question. I thought it was going to be a sunshines and rainbows, and she's like, I just think when you die, it's... she's like, do you remember when you were born? I'm like, nope. She's like, that's what I think happens. I'm like, well, that was not the answer I was expecting. You just fucked me up.
Hey, listen, that's probably what's going to happen. But I don't think that's a great thought to carry around with you.
I agree.
And I know very few things about people, but the one thing I do know is that people can convince themselves of anything.
True.
So if I'm going to convince myself of something, it's going to be that one day when I die, I'm going to be with my girl, my parents. If we have kids, they're going to be there. It's going to be a party. Bruce Springsteen is going to be playing. There's going to be great food, and it's going to be awesome. If I'm going to think of a thought, that's the thought I'm going to think of.
I like
Not, I'm going to die and it's going to be black forever and God knows what happens after that. Like, that's the theory I'm carrying with me.
That's some morbid shit, right? All right, well, look, let's get off the morbidity. Let's talk a little bit more. I just want to hit a couple key points on your book, and then we'll end there. So you talk about some of the key questions in your book. You said there was 4 key questions. Is there any of them that are more important than others? Or are they all kind of like that 25%? And I don't want to
Yeah,
give away
no.
too much about your book because I want people to buy it. But
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, the premise of the book is very simple. The first half of, listen, imagine we're going on a great adventure, me and you. We need two things. We need a map and we need a backpack. A map to tell us how we're going to get there, and a backpack full of supplies so we don't die. Those are the two
agreed.
things we need. So the first half of the book, part one, is the map. And the map has exactly what a regular map would have. Point A, point B, the path to get there, and some strategies on how to stay on that path. But because it's a self-coaching book, the path is, who am I today? Who do I want to be in the future? How am I going to get there? What's the path I'm going to take? And how do I stay on track? Meaning, how do I avoid all this shit? And how do I have a decent path to get to who do I want to be? Those are the four questions. There's four chapters, and each of the chapters is those four questions. Who am I? Who do I want to be? How am I going to get there? How do I stay on track? And rather than tell you who you want to be and who you should be and how you're going to get there and how you're going to stay on track, what I did instead was offered you questions as to how you could figure out who you are, how you can figure out who you want to be, the path you want to take to get there, and how you're going to stay on track. So rather than saying, hey, you need to work out, you need to eat probiotics, you need to follow your passion, I said, who do you want to be in the future? What legacy do you want to leave? More important than that, who are you today? What do you care about? What are the things you think about in your day-to-day life? And then on your path, what are the things that are going to keep you on track? How are you going to get there? And really the way to get there is to think about who you want to be 20 years from now and work backwards. Reverse engineer, some people might say. And then to
Okay.
stay on track, who are you going to ask for help? Who's going to keep you on track? What voices are you going to listen to? What voices are you going to ignore? And things of that nature.
I love it.
And
I
then,
love it.
yeah, thank you. And then part two of the book is your backpack. So what's going to fuel you through your adventure? So what I put in part two of the book is more questions, surprise, surprise, but questions you can ask yourself when you feel drained, when you feel unmotivated, when you need a laugh, when things are going wrong, when things are going right. What questions can you ask yourself to keep you on track? So the book is really it's setting you up for success, and it's supporting you to figure out your own journey in life. There's very few answers in the book. The only thing I do, spoiler alert, is I give you my journey. I tell you what I went through that process. So you can see someone and be like, oh, that's what he did. Oh, that's how he figured out that problem. That's the questions he asked himself. But other than that, it's a bunch of questions that I explain in good detail so you can truly understand their meaning. For example, if I ask you what does success mean to you, that's kind of hard to answer. But I go through it in the book to help you understand what success means to you, and the fact that success to you might be different than the guy to your right and the woman to your left. But really, it's a guide to help you understand your own path. And in the crux of the book, the heart of the book, is that you have all the answers. There's nothing I can tell you that will give you the answers. You've got all of them. All I'm doing is helping to give you questions that will help you unlock those answers because they already exist in your head. If you want to get meta, they exist in your heart, they exist in your soul, they exist in your brain. You already have the answers. The way you're going to find them or unlock them is by asking the right questions. And that's what the book does.
Love it. Love it. I have questions in my head right now. So as I await for the audiobook version, which hopefully you'll let me know, I'll definitely check that out. So the last question I want to hit before we get out of here today is, so for some of the people who are listening now, whether they're young, old, indifferent, whatever, do you have any tips or suggestions for people who are outside of reading your book, who feel like they have no direction in life?
Yeah, it's funny. Um, someone recently asked, "What's the best advice you've ever gotten?" And I hate to pump another podcast on your podcast, but there's
Hey,
a
man, it's all
podcast
good.
called It's all good. There's a podcast called The Diary of a CEO, and there's an interview with Seth Rogen, and he gives the best answer I could ever give anyone, which is, if you try, you might make it, and if you don't try, you definitely won't make it. And that, as simple as it might sound, is the best advice I can give to someone. And if you don't even know what you want to try, my advice to that person, again, I wrote the book with no answer, so I'm not a big advice guy. But the best advice I can give to that person is that the answers probably lie within you already. And I know it's tempting to read a book and they tell you to wake up at 6 a.m. and to take probiotics and to take cold plunges and to go for runs. But the true answers to everything you want in life already lie within you. And if you could just spend some time with yourself and think deeply about what it is you want, who it is you are today, and the path you're going to get to connect those two, you will find a lot of great answers in your life. And if you get stuck on the fact that, what if it doesn't work out? Go back to the advice I gave you from Seth Rogen, which is, if you try, maybe it'll work out. And if you don't, it will 100% not work out.
Well, the famous saying from Michael Scott is, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? Gretzky,
Yeah, Wayne Gretzky,
but Michael Scott.
Wayne Gretzky was right.
Look, it was a pleasure having you on, man. And I know we tend sometimes to get into some heavy shit on the pod, and hopefully people that are listening really take that to heart and kind of take that with them, and put that into good use for doing whatever the fuck they're doing, right? And people listen. I think I had 7 different countries listen to the podcast this past year, so which fucking blew my mind on Spotify. I'm like, I had no idea I had fucking listeners, internationally. I know I had other people that I interviewed internationally, but now before we get out of here, the future. It's something I always like to end with. I know you said you didn't have any plans for follow-up books, which was a question I had. But I know you said you had some stuff going on for an audiobook. Talk a little bit about the future, and then can you tell everybody where they can find all of your content and your book and everything?
Yeah. So my book is called The Book with No Answers, Unlocking the Power of Questions for a Better Life. It's available on Amazon. If you buy the book, I would love you to read it and also leave a review. Those, as an author, I can tell you that is incredibly important. For the future, I want to do a lot more podcasts, maybe get into some public speaking, and just shoot the shit with real people. Again, it's Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern time. We wouldn't be doing this unless we loved it. So I just want to do a lot of stuff like this. And yeah, that's it. Other than that, if anyone listening, I encourage you to check out the book, but more importantly, look within, find yourself, be happy. Listen, this was a deep podcast. There's a lot of sadness, but just try and be happy and hug the ones you love. And after this, I'm gonna have dinner with my fiance and hug her and tell her I love her, and that's, I think, what's most important. So that's what the future looks like for me, anyway.
Awesome, man. Well, look, and my podcast, this will be up in a week or two, and you can find me everywhere you listen to podcasts. It's on everything. Drink Clock Pod on socials. I'll have this up on video, the video style podcast on YouTube, probably a week or two after the audio edition. Also, I'm a part of a podcast group called the Deluxe Edition Network. Always got to talk about the podcast of the month, which are the Deluxe Edition, which is with Casey and Ray, and the Stephen Crypto Show. Great podcast, great group of people. I'll make sure, hopefully, they listen to this and maybe get you some other interviews, man. Get you even more out there. Hopefully, that'll help you. And look, I appreciate the authenticity you brought to the podcast. I know it's hard to talk about some of that stuff, so I just want to let you know I appreciate it, and any way I can help, I certainly will. So thank you so much for taking the time of your day to hang out with me, man.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Cheers.
Awesome, man. Cheers. You have a great night.
Thanks for listening to the Drink O'Clock podcast, where fascinating people from all over the world share their stories over a drink. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform to catch up on past episodes and stay up to date on new releases. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future guests, the team at Drink O'Clock would love to hear from you. You can find them on most social media at Drink O'Clock Pod. Until next time, stay classy and remember, people, it's always happy hour somewhere. Cheers!